जय श्री माता जी. Srimad Devi Bhagavat. If you want to know who Adi Shakti is, read Devi Bhagavat, said by Her Holiness Srimataji Nirmala Devi. Sankalpam. Mama Atmanaha Sahajayogi Kutumbanam Atmonnati Prityartham Moksha Prapti Prityartham Sakshat Shri Adi Shakti Mataji Shri Nirmala Devyai Pujanam Karishe. The Holy Recital of Srimad Devi Bhagavat. Chapter 3, Episode 26. Narration of that part of Sri Rama's life which has connection with Navaratri. Janmejay asked, "Please tell me the reason why Bhagavan Rama performed the Navaratri Vrat, why he had lost his kingdom, and when Sita was abducted, what did he do?" Vyasji says, this happened in ancient times. Shriman Raja Dashrath ruled over Ayodhya. He belonged to the Suryavamshi clan. In his kingdom, the gods and Brahmins were greatly revered. He had 4 sons, Rama, Lakshman, Bharat and Shatrughan. They were very wise and good-natured young men and made their father very proud and happy. Ram was the son of Kausalya. Kaikeyi was the mother of Bharat and Sumitra was the mother of Lakshman and Shatrughan. They were twins. Even as children, these boys played with bows and arrows. The ceremony for investiture with sacred thread was performed, and the king was completely happy and satisfied. Just then, sage Vishwamitra came and requested the king to send his eldest son Rama to protect the yagyas of the rishis from the demons. Rama was only 16 years of age. The king sent Rama and Lakshman with the sage. On the way, they killed the female demon Tataki. She always troubled the sages, and with one arrow Rama destroyed her. He also killed the sinful Subahu and Marich. In this way, he did the duty of protecting the yagyas of the munis from being defiled by the negative forces. Then Sri Rama, Lakshman and Vishwamitra left for Mithila. On the way, he released Ahalya from her curse and she became pure and holy again. Then they reached Janakapur. At the Swayamvar, he completed the task of breaking the great bow of Sri Shiva. Raja Janak performed the marriage of his daughter Janaki, who was a partial incarnation of Sri Lakshmi, to Sri Rama. Janaka had another daughter Urmila, whom he gave in marriage to Lakshman. Janak had a younger brother Kushidwaj. His 2 daughters were given in marriage to the noble Bharat and Shatrughan. In this way, all the 4 sons of King Dashrath were married according to custom and rites in Janakapur. King Dashrath saw that his oldest son Rama had matured into wisdom and he decided to coronate him as king of Ayodhya. Seeing this, Queen Kaikeya quickly demanded fulfillment of 2 promises that the king had made to her many years ago. Her first demand was that her son Bharat should be made king, and the second was that Rama should be banished to the forest for 14 years. Rama, Lakshman and Sita accordingly left to live a life of exile in the forest. King Dashrath became very sad, but he also remembered a curse that was upon him. He could not bear the separation and gave up his life. The righteous and compassionate Bharat knew that his mother was the cause of his father's death. He loved his brother and refused the kingdom. Bhagwan Rama lived in Panchavati in the Dandaka forest. Ravana's younger sister Shurpanaka came there and was under the influence of Kamadev, Cupid. Lakshman disfigured her face and she went before her brother with her nose and ears cut off. Khar and Dushan, the 2 giant brothers of Ravana, and other demons began to fight a fierce battle with Sri Rama. They were very strong and powerful, but Sri Rama overcame them and killed them. Shurpanakha was a very devious woman. She went to Lanka and, with face bleeding, appeared before Ravana and gave him the shocking news of the death of Khar and Dushan. Ravana started shaking with anger. He mounted his chariot and went to Marich. Marich was accomplished in the art of illusion and conjuring. Ravana ordered him to change himself into a golden deer to lure Sita. Under the impulse of fate, Sita got attracted to the deer and requested Sri Rama to get her the golden deer. Sri Rama did not even ponder. He left Lakshman behind, picked up his bow and arrow, and followed the deer. Using his powers, Marich used to appear and disappear from Sri Rama's sight and gradually lured him into another forest far away. When he was within a short distance, Sri Rama aimed an arrow and shot him. Even as he was dying, Marich shouted in a loud voice, disguised as Sri Rama's, and said, "O Lakshman, now I am dying." These words were heard by Sita. She was alarmed and requested Lakshman to go immediately and find Sri Raghunandan and help him. But Lakshman said, "O Mother Janaka Nandini, Raghavendra instructed me to stay here and protect you. I cannot disobey him. Have no fear. There is no one born on this earth who can kill Bhagwan Ram. I will not leave you alone and disobey Raghavendra." Vyasji says, Sita was afraid and tears fell from her eyes. Even though she was a calm and gentle natured person, she scolded Lakshman. Hearing her angry words, Lakshman became perplexed. He said, "O you who are born of this earth, you have spoken in very stern and severe tones. How and why did these harsh words come out of your mouth? I am afraid of the final outcome." Lakshman left Sita and went looking for his brother Sri Rama. Tears fell uncontrollably from his eyes. He was very sad. As soon as he left, Ravan came to the ashram disguised as a mendicant. Thinking he was a sannyasi, Sita respectfully placed fruits and food before him. He spoke to her in deceptively sweet tones. "O you with beautiful eyes, who are you and why do you live alone in the forest? Who is your father? Who is your brother? And who has married you? Why are you living like a primitive woman, all alone and unattended? Dear one, you are as beautiful as a goddess, and you should be living in a palace. What is the reason that you are living in the forest like the wife of a Muni?" Vyasji says, Janaka Kumari Janaki, still under the influence of destiny, thought Mandodari Pati Ravana was a holy man. She said, "There is a prosperous and famous king called Maharaj Dashrath. He has 4 sons. The eldest is famous by the name of Rama. He is my husband. The king has sent my husband Rama out of the kingdom on the instigation of his queen Kaikeyi. His brother Lakshman also came with him. My father is Raja Janaka and my name is Janaki. Sri Rama broke the bow of Sri Shankar and married me. I am here in this forest under his protection. He has just gone out to hunt a golden deer for me. On hearing his call for help, Lakshman has also just gone. It is these 2 powerful brothers who look after me, and I live here fearlessly. Both of them will shortly return and worship you in the proper way. Sannyasis represent Sri Vishnu, and you have already become the receiver of my puja. This forest is full of ferocious demons. I request you to tell me the truth. Who are you, and why are you disguised as a sannyasi?" Ravan said, "I am Ravan, the powerful king of Lanka. My wife is called Mandodari. O beautiful one, it is to get you that I have come in this disguise. My sister Shurpanakha has caused me to come here. She gave me the horrible news of the killing of Khar and Dushan. So now you must leave your husband and become the wife of the king of Lanka. Rama has lost the kingdom. He is always sad and depressed, and he lives in a forest. You can become my queen. Mandodari will be subject to you, and I will be your servant. I have been victorious over many kingdoms, and yet I bow my head before you. Take my hand and promise to be my queen. I had earlier approached your father, Raja Janaka, for your hand, but he said that he had laid a condition that Shankar's mighty bow had to be broken. I was afraid to break the bow of Bhagwan Shankar, so I did not attend the Swayamvara. But since then, I have been uneasy and unhappy. I heard that you were living in this forest, and that is why I came. Now you must reward all my efforts. Chapter 3, Episode 27-28. Sita Haran, Abduction of Sita, Rama and Lakshman discuss fate and destiny, Naradji advises Navaratra Vrat. Vyasji says, hearing these despicable and contemptible words of Ravan, Mother Sita was overcome with fear. Her whole body began to tremble. Then she stilled her mind and spoke. O son of Pulastya, why have you got entangled in lust and desire? And why are you speaking in this despicable way? I am not a woman in the marketplace. I was born in the lineage of Raja Janaka. O Ravan, go back to Lanka. Sri Rama will certainly kill you, and I will be the cause of your death. This is the absolute truth. Saying this, Bhagavati Janaki went to the room made of leaves where the sacred fire was still burning. She kept warning the wicked Ravan, stay far, stay far. He followed her, and assuming his true demonic form, he forcibly held her. Sita began to weep and kept calling, O Ram, O Lakshman. Ravan carried her to his chariot and immediately left the place. On the way, he was stopped by son of Arun, the sacred vulture Jatayu. In the same forest, there was a fierce battle, and Jatayu became weary and weak. Ravan took Sita and went away to Lanka. He made arrangements for her stay in a grove of Ashoka trees and put Rakshasis to guard her. Gentle words, gifts, threats, and punishments, nothing moved Sita from her virtuous conduct. In the forest, Rama killed the golden deer and was on his way when he met Lakshman. As soon as he saw Lakshman, Sri Rama said, Brother, why have you committed an irresponsible action like this? Why did you leave Sita alone and unprotected? What was the reason? Was it the scream of this unfortunate deer that brought you? Lakshman recalled Sita's stern words to him. He said, Prabhu, this is a bad time which is overpowering. It is under its influence that I came here. This is the truth. Then both of them entered the room of the sacred fire and saw the place in disarray. They sank into deep sorrow, and both the brothers began to search for Sita. They reached the spot where Jatayu, king of birds, had fallen. The earth had held him in her lap. He was still alive. He said, Just a short while ago, Ravan has taken Janaknandan Janaki away. I intercepted that wild demon, but in the end his strength prevailed and he laid me down on the earth. After saying this, Jatayu breathed his last. Contact with God had made his body pure and holy. Sri Rama and Lakshman performed the last rites. Then they moved on. They killed Kaband and freed him from a curse. Kaband introduced Sugriv to Sri Rama and they became friends. The brave Vali attained heaven at the hands of Sri Rama. To fulfill one of the purposes of his incarnation, Sri Rama handed over the prosperous kingdom of Kishkinda to Sugriv. Sri Rama and Lakshman stayed a long time in that place. They were constantly thinking of Sita, who was in Ravana's custody. One day, Sri Ram said to Lakshman, "Son of Sumitra, we have not been able to find Sita. Without her, my death is very imminent. I cannot set foot in Ayodhya without her. The kingdom has passed out of my hands. I am living in exile in the forest. My father is dead. My wife has been abducted. I don't know what further play destiny has got for me. I was born in the foremost clan of Manu. Royal life was at my disposal. Still, I am roaming, homeless in the forest. You have also renounced the palace and accepted the hardships of fate. Videha Kumari Sita also innocently came away with us. This vile and wicked fate has placed this heavy burden of sorrow upon her. How will she tolerate life in that horrible demon's house? She is sinless. She loves me dearly. She can never live there. She who was born in the house of Raja Janaka can never live like an ordinary, unprincipled lady. O Bharat Anuj, younger brother of Bharat, if Ravan compels her, she would rather give up her life. This is the absolute truth. O brave Lakshman, if Sita gives up her life, my soul will also leave my body. This is inevitable. Thus the lotus eyed Bhagwan Ram lamented the loss of Sita. Then the virtuous Lakshman comforted his brother. O you with mighty arms, overcome this depression and dejection and take courage. I will go to Lanka, kill that evil demon, and bring Sita to you. The wise man keeps balance in happiness and in sorrow. To get attached to failure or success is the mistake a foolish makes. Meetings and partings happen in life, and one should not grieve. Just as you have lost your kingdom and have been parted from Mother Sita, so also you will get back your kingdom and be reunited with Sita. There is no need to think otherwise. So please renounce your grief. There are lots of monkeys here. They will go in all four directions in search of Janaki ji. With their help, Mother Sita will definitely be found. As soon as I find a route, I will go there, vanquish Ravan, and bring Mother Sita back with me. I can even ask Brother Bharat to come with Shatrughan and his army, and three of us will kill the enemy. Please do not grieve. Raghav, long ago, Maharaj Raghu sat on the same chariot and won victories in all directions. You are the light of that clan, so it is not right for you to be dejected. I alone can vanquish the gods and the demons, but I have so many supporters, so there can be no difficulty in defeating him. I will even call Raja Janak as an ally. Raghunandan, with all these efforts, there is no doubt that the tormentor of the Devas, Ravan, will die. The cycle of happiness and sorrow and happiness goes on unceasingly. One situation cannot prevail permanently. A weak person who succumbs to the influence of happiness or sorrow, he sinks into the ocean of illusion. He can never be joyous. But you are beyond this state. Raghunandan, it happened a long time ago. Even Indra had to undergo pain and hardship. All the gods got together and put Nahush on the throne of Indra. Indra left heaven in great fear and hid in the pond of a lotus. He lived there for many years, but finally times changed and he got back the throne of heaven. When Nahush set eyes on Indra's queen Indrani and wanted to abduct her, and at the same time he began to disrespect the Brahmins, Muni Agastya became angry and cursed him. He immediately turned into a python and fell to earth. Because of his lust, he earned a place in the Sarpayoni reptile class. Therefore, O Raghav, when faced with difficulties, it is not proper to grieve. The wise man keeps his balance and watches as a witness. O auspicious one, nothing is hidden from you. O Lord of the world, you are omnipotent and omniscient. Then why are you behaving like an ordinary mortal and sinking into deep sorrow? Vyasji says, hearing Lakshman's words, Sri Rama's discretion and wisdom began to manifest. He renounced grief and became peaceful. Both sat in deep meditation. From the Akash came Rishi Narada, and the air was full of sweet notes from his veena and his chantings of the Samaveda. He stopped in front of Sri Rama, who immediately stood up. He offered him a seat of honor. He offered water for washing his feet and water for rinsing the mouth. Then, with the sage's permission, Bhagwan Ram sat beside him. Lakshman was also present. Muni Narad made enquiries regarding their well being, and then he said, Raghav, why are you in deep sorrow like an ordinary human? Ravan has abducted Sita, I am aware of this. I had been to Devalok and I heard the news there. Not knowing that death is hovering above his head, Ravan fell under the influence of infatuation and committed this heinous act. He has to be killed by you. That is the purpose of your present incarnation, and that is why Sita was abducted. In her previous life, Janaki was the daughter of a Muni. It is her nature to be in tapasya. She was meditating in a forest when Ravan first saw her. He asked her to marry him. She became very angry and scolded him. He caught her by her hair. Immediately she decided to abandon the body that he had defiled by his touch. Before she died, she cursed him. You vile and wicked man, for your destruction I will take birth on the earth, but I will not be born of a mother. I will be born of the earth. This is the same Sita who is a partial incarnation of goddess Lakshmi. Under a delusion, Ravan has put a snake of doom around his neck, mistaking it for a mala, garland. Raghav, the wronged Brahmins had prayed to Sri Hari to cause Ravan's death. As a result, you have taken your birth in the clan of Raghu. O you with strong arms, maintain your fortitude and courage. Sita, who is on the tattva of dharma and who is Sakshat Devi, cannot come to any harm. Her attention is constantly upon you. Indra himself has made arrangements to send milk of the divine cow Kamadhenu for Sita to drink. The lotus eyed Sita can never suffer hunger pangs after drinking the nectar like milk of the heavenly Surabhi. I have seen this myself. Raghav, now I will tell you how you can kill Ravan. During this month of Ashwin, you start the Navaratra Vrat. Keep a fast, worship Devi Bhagavati, chant her mantras, and perform homas. You will get all the siddhis, powers. Before this, all the gods from Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh to Indra in the heavens have all performed the Navaratra Vrat. You must also do it. Any person who is in great difficulty should perform this Vrat. Raghav, even the great sages like Vishwamitra, Bhrigu, Vashisht, and Kashyap have all done it. So, Rajendra, before vanquishing Ravan, you should perform the Navaratra Vrat. Before killing Vritrasur, Indra did it, and before killing the demon Tripur, Sri Shankar also did the Navaratra Vrat. Before killing Madhu, Bhagwan Sri Hari performed this Vrat on Mount Sumeru. Therefore, O Raghav, take the utmost care and perform this Vrat. Bhagwan Ram asked, O compassionate one, be kind and tell me, who is this Devi? What is her effect? From where did she incarnate and by what names is she called? Naradji said, listen, O Ram. That goddess is Adi Shakti. She is eternal. By her grace, all actions are performed. When she is worshipped, it is her nature to be benevolent and compassionate. Raghunandan, She is the causal of the existence of all things, starting with Brahma. Without her energy, nothing can move or breathe. My father Brahma creates, Vishnu protects, and Mahesh destroys. The energy which is used for these auspicious activities comes from her. In the three worlds, whatever is existent or non existent, the causal of it is none other than this Devi Adishakti. When there was nothing in existence, even then she reigns supreme. Every single being comes into existence from her and gives her joy. This is about the beginning of the creation. At that time, she was in Nirgun state, unmanifested and without attributes. Then this Devi manifested, and the three lokas came into existence. First, Brahma and all the gods were endowed with her energy. When a being realizes this supreme goddess, then he is liberated from the bonds of life, death, and rebirth. It is of utmost importance to know the goddess. The Vedas were created after this, which means the privilege of composing the Vedas was given to them. Brahma and the other gods have described her qualities and sung her praises of her actions, and have given innumerable names to the Devi. How much of it can I tell you? Whatever sounds exist between A and Kshar, that is Akshar, can be made into her names and still not be adequate to describe her. She is beyond description. Bhagwan Ram said, O all knowing one, please tell me concisely the procedures to be observed for this most glorious act of worship. I wish to perform Navaratra Vrat. Sri Narada said, Ram, select a level ground and install a Singhasan. Invite, most respectfully, Bhagavati Adi Shakti to take her seat and then for 9 nights observe fast and perform the pujas. They should be correct and as per procedure. I will preside over the puja as head priest because I am keen that the desire of the devas get fulfilled. Vyasji says, Sri Rama accepted entirely what sage Narada said. He constructed a beautiful Singhasan and enthroned an image of the most benevolent, the most compassionate Bhagavati Jagadambika. He fasted for 9 nights while performing the puja according to prescribed rites. The month of Ashwin arrived. Arrangements had been made on the auspicious Kishkinda mountain. For 9 days, Sri Rama was totally absorbed in the pujas and homas. They closely obeyed all the instructions that sage Narada gave, and both the brothers performed the puja with full attention. On the Ashtami, at midnight, the Devi Bhagavati appeared. She came seated on a lion and gave darshan to Rama and Lakshman. On that mountain, seated on her Vahana, Devi Bhagavati spoke in clear, loud, and deep tones. She was pleased with the single minded devotion and love with which the puja was performed. The Devi said, O you who are blessed with strong and powerful arms, Rama, I am very pleased with your vrat and puja. Whatever you desire in your heart, ask for it. You are a partial manifestation of Bhagwan Narayan. You were born in the foremost clan of Manu. It is for fulfilling the prayer of the Devas for the destruction of Ravan that you have been incarnated by me. Before this also, you incarnated as a Matsya, fish, to kill a demon. At that time, you fulfilled the prayers of the gods and protected the Vedas. Later, you incarnated as a tortoise and anchored the mountain Mandrachal on your back while it was being used to churn the ocean. From this churning, the gods received the urn of nectar which gave them my energy. Ram, you have also incarnated as a boar. You had lifted Mother Earth between your tusks and destroyed Hiranyaksh, brother of Hiranyakashipu. Then you incarnated as Narasimha, that is half man, half lion, to kill Hiranyakashipu and protect Prahlad. In your incarnation as Vaman, that is dwarf, you put down the oversized ego of Bali. You also incarnated as the younger brother of Indra. You also came as a partial avatar of Vishnu and were born as the son of Jamadagni. You defeated the Kshatriyas and restored earth to the Brahmins. Raghunandan, in the same way, you have incarnated again and taken birth as Rama, son of Dashrath. All the gods prayed to me for you to incarnate again because the demon Ravan is troubling them. Rajan, all these strong and powerful monkeys are actually incarnations of the Devas and they will help you. They are all energized with my Shakti. O Holy One, this younger brother of yours, Lakshman, is the incarnation of Seshnag. He will destroy Ravan's son, Meghnad. You should have no doubts about this. Now, your first action should be, in the season of Vasant, to perform with single minded attention and devotion my puja. After that, kill Ravan and rule as a king in peace and joy. For 11,000 years, your kingdom will prevail. After that, you will return to your abode. Vyasji says, after this, Bhagavati removed herself from their sight. There were no bounds to the joy that was felt by Rama and Lakshman. After completing the Navaratra Puja on the 10th day, Rama started his journey. Rama is known in the entire world as Janaki Vallabh, Lord of Janaki. He fulfills all desires. He went with Sugriv to the shores of the ocean. Lakshman also accompanied him. They built a bridge across the ocean and went to Lanka. There, Ravan, the scourge of the Devas, met his death at the hands of Sri Rama. The person who worships Devi Bhagavati, Adi Shakti, with wholehearted bhakti and single minded attention not only gets his desires fulfilled but also gains a place in Nirmal Dham at the lotus feet of Adi Shakti. End of chapter 3. Chapter 4, Episode 1 to 3. Janmejay questions Vyasji about incarnations. Kashyap is cursed by Varun and Brahma, and Aditi is cursed by Diti. Janmejay said, O Muni Vyasji, you are the vessel of inexhaustible knowledge. Your mind is pure. You have enhanced the auspiciousness of our clan. I have heard that, son of Sursen, the most auspicious Vasudevji was a most righteous man. He was so holy that God Himself incarnated as his son. In spite of all this, he and his wife Devaki suffered imprisonment at the hands of Kansa. What was there transgressive that caused this grief? Also, why were the 6 sons of Devaki killed at birth? Kansa belonged to the same clan of Yayati. Then why did he commit such heinous acts? What was the reason that Sri Krishna took birth in a prison? In this way, Janmejay expressed many doubts and confusions that he had had in his mind regarding the incarnation of Sri Krishna and the Pandavas. Those who are born Kshatriyas do not torment Brahmins. Then why did my father insult a meditating Brahmin? All these doubts are invading my attention and disturbing me. You are like a father to me. All knowledge is within you. Please be kind to me and clear my attention of all these thoughts. Suji says, Parikshit Kumar Janmejay questioned Satyavati Nandan Vyasji in this way and then settled quietly to listen. Then Vyasji, who possessed the entire knowledge of the Puranas, began to speak. Vyasji said, Rajan, what can I say? The movement of destiny is very profound and unchangeable. Even the gods have not been able to fathom its depths, then what can mere mortals hope to understand? From the time the threefold creation has come into existence, the law of action and reaction is intertwined with it. Karma is the causal of the birth of a creature on this earth and its circumstances. Even if a life form is exempt from birth and death, still the seed within is subject to karma and causes it to take birth and die in many yonis, strata. Once the karmas have been paid for, the being has no more subjection or connection to fate and destiny. There are three attributes in this world: supreme, culpable, that is blamable, and mixed. The wise sages who know the secrets of the tattvas have divided karmas into three categories: gathered or collected, fated or destined, and the present. In fate, there is a mixture of all the three categories. Rajan, from Brahma downwards, all are subject to it. Maharaj, happiness and sorrow, old age, death, pleasure, grief, desire, anger, and lust. All these qualities are connected with fate. As fate, it exerts its effect on everything. Even heaven is not devoid of this, because it keeps its connection with the gods, humans, and animals. These different forms are the result of fate. According to the actions performed in past lives, whether in love or hostility and hatred, they find abode in that kind of body. If the karmas do not decrease, it is impossible for a living thing to ascend. Karma is the cause of ceaseless births and deaths. This gives the general belief that the creation is eternal and immutable. But even the sages who meditate on this are not able to discover whether the world is eternal or temporary. In the illusionary world, it seems eternal. As long as the cause is present, action will not cease. Entangled in the knot of karma, the world is changeable. Beings have also to descend into lower yonis. If they were free of this cycle, this situation would not have prevailed. Who would want to give up the joys of heaven to live in the mortal world of fear, filth, and excreta? Who would give up the opportunity of playing with flowers and cool springs and sitting on a throne for sojourn in the womb? Which wise man would opt for lying face down in the womb when he can have a heavenly bed and soft silken pillows? Is there a person who would prefer the noise and pollution of hell to hearing divine music and dance? In the three worlds, there is no greater hell than the mortal womb. For fear of this, the Munis go into difficult renunciation and tapas. Even kings who desire liberation from birth renounce their kingdoms and go into the forest. Worms bite in the womb, and the heat of the digestive system burns, and one is mercilessly tied down. Rajan, what happiness is there in such a place? It is better to be in jail or to be bound in iron chains. But even a moment inside the womb is not desirable. To stay there for 10 months is the biggest ordeal. Even emerging from the womb is an ordeal. The road which leads outside is horrible. Then in infancy, the inability to walk and talk is insufferable. Hunger and thirst add to the woes. He cannot do anything by himself and is always in fear. When the child cries from hunger, the parents think he is unwell and give him all kinds of medicine. After seeing all this, which intelligent person will desire another birth? O king, the gods, humans, and animals take on a body to receive or make payment for all their past deeds, good or bad. By doing tapasya, yagyas, and acts of charity, a person can attain heaven. But as soon as the payment for good deeds get exhausted, even Indra has to take birth again. There is no doubt in this. When Sri Rama incarnated, all the Devas also incarnated as monkeys to help him. To assist Sri Krishna, the gods came as Yadavs. In this way, God incarnates in various yonis for different causes. O king, like the wheels of a chariot, the various incarnations are not similar. It is the prerogative of God to destroy demons. He is the supreme being. Sometimes he incarnates partially and sometimes in part of the partial and comes onto the earth to accomplish a purpose. I am going to tell you the divine story of Krishna Avatar. Sri Vishnu himself incarnated and took birth in the Yayati clan. The most glorious Vasudevji is a partial incarnation of Muni Kashyap. He had previously come under a curse, and that was the cause of his taking birth as a keeper of cows. Muni Kashyap had two wives, Aditi and Sursa. They have incarnated as two sisters, Devaki and Rohini. In anger, Varun cursed all of them and they had to take birth on this earth. King Janmejay asked, what mistake did Muni Kashyap commit that made Varun so angry that he cursed him and his wives? Bhagwan Vishnu is always enthroned in Vaikunth. He is Parabrahma Parameshwar, God Almighty. What was the reason for his incarnating in Gokul? Bhagwan Narayan is indestructible. All the gods are in his jurisdiction. He is the support of the universe. Who can control him? Why does he leave his abode and come into the mortal world? What human happiness could have attracted the Lord? The Supreme Lord, Sri Hari, took the incarnation of Sri Rama. He suffered years of exile in the forest, Sita was abducted, and he suffered the pangs of parting. Then he suffered the hardships of war with Ravan, and even after rescuing Sita, he had again suffered the heartache of sending her away. Sri Krishna's avatar was also full of pain. He was born in prison. Then he was taken to Gokul. There he lived the humble life of a cowherd. After much difficulty, he killed Kansa. Then he went to Dwaraka. He faced a lot of hardships, and I cannot understand why. Muni, you have the complete knowledge. Please clear all these doubts which are disturbing my attention. Vyasji says, Bhagwan Vishnu has incarnated many times, and the circumstances and situations in this manifest world become the cause of the incarnation. Each time, the lesser gods also incarnate on this earth, and for that also there are causes. First, I will tell you what caused the incarnation of Vasudev, Devaki, and Rohini. Listen carefully. It happened long ago. Shriman Kashyapji performed a yagya and brought Varun's sacred cow for its milk. After the yagya, Varun asked for the cow, but he did not return it. So Varun went to Brahmaji and asked, what shall I do? In spite of asking many times, Kashyap is not returning my sacred cow. Therefore, I have cursed him that he will be born on the earth as a keeper of cows and will live as a human. May his two wives also take mortal birth. In the absence of my cow, the calves are starving and crying. That curse will be the cause of Aditi taking birth on the earth. She will be kept in prison and she will suffer trials and tribulations. Vyasji says, after hearing Varun's complaint, Brahmaji sent for Muni Kashyap and said, O fortunate one, why have you not returned Lokpal, Varun's cow to him? There is nothing that you do not know. You are very wise. Knowing the workings of divine justice, how could you fall into this trap? Greed is a very strong force. It does not spare anyone. Under its influence, many sins are committed and the result is hell. No one has been to conquer it. Even Kashyap failed in renouncing greed. We salute those saintly munis who have been able to defeat it. They live in forests and their minds are always at rest. They do not even accept charity or gifts. The most powerful enemy on earth is greed. It makes one impure and unholy. By his love for materialism and greed, his ascent has been interrupted. After saying all this, Brahmaji also placed a curse upon Kashyap Muni. Even though he was his dear son, in order to protect the maryadas of dharma and righteousness, Brahma pronounced his decision. Kashyap, you will incarnate on the earth and take birth in the clan of Yadu. Your two wives will also accompany you. You will live there as a farmer of cows. Vyasji says, as per the curses of Varun and Brahma, Kashyapji took a partial incarnation. In another instance, coming under great sorrow and stress, Diti cursed Aditi thus: as soon as you give birth to each of your 7 sons, they will die. Janmejay asked, O great Muni, Diti and Aditi were real sisters. Then how could Diti give such a horrible curse to her own sister Diti? Please tell me the reason. Also, what sorrow befell her? Suji says, when King Janmejay asked this, Vyasji told him the entire story. Vyasji said, Rajan, Daksha Prajapati had two beautiful and virtuous daughters, Diti and Aditi. They had the good fortune of becoming the wives of sage Kashyap. Aditi gave birth to the majestic Indra. Diti also desired to have a son just like Indra. So she said to Kashyapji, Lord, I also wish to have an illustrious and pious, strong and brave son. Kashyap said, have faith and carry out the vrat that I tell you, and you will also have a son like Indra. She immediately started the fast and austerity that her husband had advised. In a short while, she became with child and she continued to lead a pure life and observed the Payovrat, drinking milk and water. When the child was fully formed within, a glow began to spread from Diti's body. When Aditi saw this, she began to fear that Diti's son would eclipse Indra. The proud and haughty Aditi called her son Indra and said, your rival is going to be born of Diti. You must think of a plan to destroy the child before it is born. I cannot bear the thought of any other child outshining you. If you wish to please me, use any means you can and destroy the unborn child. Vyasji says, after hearing his mother's words, Indra became thoughtful for a while. Then he went to his stepmother. Sinful thoughts had already entered his mind. He offered pranams and spoke in sweet tones, which disguised and poison which was in his heart. Indra said, Mother, you are fasting and you have become weak. I have come to serve you. Order me to do whatever you wish. Shall I press your feet? By pleasing elders, one gets blessings and good fortune. Just as my mother Aditi, so also you are my mother. Indra began to massage her feet. She was tired from fasting and she was lulled and relaxed. She was overcome with sleep. She trusted Indra fully. As soon as Indra saw that Diti was asleep, he assumed a tiny form, took a sharp weapon in his hand and entered her body. By his yogic powers, he went inside the womb and with his vajra, spear, he cut the womb into 7 pieces. The child cried out in pain. Indra further cut each of the 7 pieces into 7 more. So the child became the 49 pavans, winds. Only after it was over, the beautiful Diti awoke. She realized that her womb had been cut and she also realized that Indra had deceived her. She was greatly shocked. She was filled with anger. She knew that her sister Aditi had played a part in this despicable deed. The normally placid, pious, and sweet tempered Diti was so enraged that she cursed both Indra and Aditi. She said, "In the same way that Indra deceived me and destroyed my child, he will also lose kingship of Trilok, the three worlds, and in the way that the sinful Aditi caused the death of my unborn child, she will lose every boy child that is born to her immediately after birth. She will also be in prison. For all this, she will take a human birth." Vyasji says, as Diti was pronouncing the curse, Kashyapji heard it. With great love, he tried to pacify her. He said, "O auspicious one, do not be angry. The children born of you will be very strong and powerful, and will be in the category of gods. They will be designated deities of the wind, and they will be friends of Indra. This curse that you have pronounced will take effect in the 28th part of the third of the four ages. This beautiful Aditi will take a human birth and suffer the curse. Both the curses will run parallel to each other. Therefore, it is imperative for Aditi to take a human birth, and you have provided the cause." Chapter 4, Episode 4. Janmejay asks, and Vyasji explains the importance of Maya. Raja Janmejay said, "O illustrious one, this episode has put me into great confusion. The world seems to be the embodiment of sin. What is the strategy to avoid entanglement?" Indra was the son of Kashyap. In spite of that, he committed such a heinous crime, killing without mercy an unborn child. He who is the ruler of all, the protector of Dharma, and the lord of the three worlds, Trilok, stooped to such a deed. Then how can ordinary people escape sin? O Jagadguru, war began in Kurukshetra. The Kauravas and Pandavas were both aware that the world is an illusion. The Pandavas were considered incarnations of the Devas. They were all anchored in Dharma. Then why did they indulge in this reproachable act? Bhagavati Shruti says the first step of Dharma is truth. The second is purity, freedom from defilement. The third step is compassion, and the fourth is generosity. Those who are well versed in the Purans also say the same. In the absence of these qualities, how can Dharma exist? All actions that go against Dharma cannot bear good fruit. Sri Vishnu, who is Jagat Prabhu, also resorted to deception when he came as Vamana to King Bali. King Bali had completed 100 yagyas. He observed the teachings of the Vedas. He was righteous, generous, truthful, and had successfully subdued all his senses. But by the deception of Vaman Avatar, he suddenly was deprived of his kingdom. Vyasji, please tell me, who was the victor, Bali or Vamana? You are the author of the Puranas. You know the rules of Dharma. Please enlighten me. Vyasji says, Rajan, victory was Bali's because he gave away the world. Narendra, he who is known as Trivikram, had to come as Vaman due to the influence of guile and duplicity. Later, he stationed himself as a gatekeeper of King Bali. In other words, Rajan, the foremost dharma is truth. But to observe this in its purest form is very difficult and almost impossible because Trigunatmika Maya is present in myriad forms and is very powerful. This world which exists is covered by the three attributes of this Maya. Therefore, it is very difficult to find truth which has not even a spot of Maya in it. There is always an adulteration in the truth. Yes, those who live in isolation in the forest, who have no attachments, who do not take anything from anyone, who do not give favors, and who have all their senses under control, such saints and ascetics can attain truth in all its purity. They are in a situation where there is no necessity to speak an untruth. They can be used as an example with the three gunas sattva, rajo, and tamo, and they are in different combinations as they cannot exist alone. Dharma is truth, but the attention cannot stay fixed on it for long because of the indelible maya. The senses constantly stir the attention and the mind gets entangled in the web. This gives rise to various emotions and desires. Rajan, every living thing, movable and immovable, is subject to Maya. The whole world is her spot. It is her nature to cause illusion and delusion even to the gods. Man always takes recourse to untruth to accomplish his ends. Therefore, a man, before embarking on a mission, should always avoid thinking, because this thinking leads to anticipating situations and taking devious actions. Then the overpowering anger, lust, and greed rear their ugly heads. Then one loses discretion and does not know what is good and what is bad. If they become wealthy, they get filled with ego, conceit, and arrogance. Then comes illusion and delusion, and finally and inevitably comes doom and death. In such circumstances, all these kinds of resolutions and doubts assail a person. He becomes cunning, and this gives birth to sin. A man loses his discretion and no longer knows what actions are good and what are bad. If he becomes wealthy, then he becomes proud, arrogant, and aggressive. The mind gets filled with envy and jealousy, and this further causes hatred, malice, enmity, and spite. When the mind is under delusion and spiritual ignorance, it falls prey to desires, expectations, greed, and ambitions, and what follows is dissatisfaction, unhappiness, hatred, and in severe cases, atheism or non belief in God. An egoistical person always says, I, and mine. Actions done in anger or out of greed are considered impure and unholy. It is advisable for a wise man to always consider the consequences before committing an action. He must ensure that he does not cause harm, bodily or emotionally, to anyone. That is a dharmic action. Those who enter into transactions which hurt or harm others immediately come under the laws of karma and have to suffer the fruits of their actions. That is why purity of mind is so important. Especially during yagyas and pujas, the presiding Brahmins should have pure and chaste attention. If all the participants are pure and chaste, then only a puja can be sampurna, that is complete and acceptable to the Devi. Also, there should be only pure desire. If one performs puja for gain or for causing destruction or harm to one's enemies, he reaps the opposite effect. A selfish man has no discretion. The Vedas mention that gods are born from Sattva Guna, human beings are born from Rajoguna, and animals and the rest of creation are born from Tamoguna. For this reason, the gods are considered the quintessence of Sattva, but they also stoop to intrigue and hostilities. So, if animals do the same, it is not surprising. It has become the main occupation of the gods to disturb and break the tapasyas of each other. They are always wary of each other. They are always scheming and plotting. O king, this creation itself was born out of ego. Therefore, it cannot escape desires, illusions, and delusions. Chapter 4, Episode 5 to 6. Indra fails to break the tapas of Nar Narayana. He sends the Apsaras as a last resort. Vyasji says, Rajendra, there is no use talking any more about this. It is very rare and almost impossible to find a person whose attention is pure and whose mind is free from desires, because this entire creation is permeated with desire, illusion, and delusion. It has become a common practice to retaliate, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But to attack or cause harm to a non-violent and innocent man is considered very low class and despicable. It is said that collective actions are the causals of the various yugas. For the Sattvic temperament, there is Satya Yuga. For the Rajas, there is Treta Yuga. And for the Tamas temperament, there is Kali Yuga, always before us. A person who is always dharmic and righteous can claim to be a Satya Yugi. Of course, in the other yugas also, people are trying to be dharmic. The first and foremost requirement for a dharmic life is pure desire. But desire is always prone to contamination and adulteration. Impure desires never allow dharma to remain pure and perfect. All the dharmas are said to be sons of Brahma. They were born out of his heart. Those who observe dharma in its entirety existed as Brahmins. They were married to the 10 daughters of Daksha Prajapati. The marriage was performed with all the proper rites and ceremonies. The most truthful and righteous dharma produced many sons. They were called Hari, Krishna, Nar, and Narayan. Through Hari and Krishna, the rules of yoga philosophy were constantly observed. Nar and Narayan went to the Himalayas and began their tapasya and meditation on a mountain peak called Badarikashram. They are considered the most famous of the ancient tapasvis. It had become their regular practice to sit on the expansive banks of the holy river Ganga and meditate on Brahma. The two brothers, who were a partial incarnation of Sri Hari, stayed on the mountain for 1,000 years, immersed in deep meditation. They began to radiate light all over the world. This gave rise to envy and fear in the heart of Indra. He began to plan and plot. What shall I do now? These great tapasvis will definitely receive boons, and then they might covet my throne. What obstacle can I put in their way so that their meditation is disturbed and rendered incomplete? These thoughts gave rise to anger, hatred, and greed in Indra's mind. He mounted his Vahana, the elephant called Airavat, and proceeded to the Gandhamadhan mountain with the sole intention of breaking the tapasya of Nar and Narayan. As he approached, he saw their sacred ashram, which was glowing like the rising sun. He wondered, is this a manifestation of Sri Vishnu himself, or have two suns risen today? What is it that these two sons of Dharma are trying to achieve? Then he addressed Nar and Narayan, O sons of Dharma, you are the most fortunate and auspicious. What is it you desire? I am prepared to grant any boon that you ask. That is why I have come. Even if you ask for a boon out of proportion to your tapasya, I will grant it. Vyasji says, Indra stood before the meditating sages and kept repeating his offer, but they did not answer. They were in deep thoughtlessness. There was no agitation in their minds. Then Indra spread the Mohini Maya of enchantment all around. Wolves, lions, and tigers made fearsome sounds. Then he created fire, storm, and rain, but nothing affected the meditating sages. Seeing this, Indra returned to his seat. He was neither able to tempt them with an offer of boons, nor could he disturb them with fearful events. Adishakti Bhagavati Jagadishwari is also known as Mahavidya. She manifests in the creation and she is eternal. For those who are engrossed in meditation upon the lotus feet of Adi Shakti, there is no Maya that can distract or disturb them, as Maya also is her creation. So, how can a deva or a demon ever hope to succeed in breaking the dhyana or meditation of a devotee whose attention is fixed on the lotus feet of Devi Bhagavati Adi Shakti? A Devi Bhakt becomes immune and devoid of all sin. The most important and powerful mantras of the Devi are Vag Bij, Kam Bij, and Maya Bij. When these mantras become a part and parcel of a devotee's attention, then there is no one in this creation who can put obstacles in the way of a Devi Bhakt. Indra realized that his powers were useless before Nara and Narayan, so he requested Kamadev, the god of love, and Ritu, the king of the seasons, to help him. Come with spring and all the apsaras to the Gandhamadan mountains to Badarikashram, where the foremost of rishis, Nara and Narayan, are immersed in deep meditation. You are my last resort. You have got to pierce their attention with your Cupid's arrows. In this whole world, there is no deva, demon, or human who has not fallen victim to your darts of desire and love. Even Brahma, myself, Shankar, Chandrama, and Agni Devata have succumbed to your charmed arrows. So, to what category do these rishis belong that they can withstand your arrows? I give you this bevy of beautiful apsaras to assist you. Tilottama or Rambha can accomplish this job, and so can you all by yourself. So, if all of you combine your efforts, you just cannot fail. I will fulfill any demand that you make. I even offered these two rishis any boon they desired, but they did not respond. They did not even flicker an eyelid, nor did they try to protect their bodies when I created an illusion of fire, storms, and dangerous wild animals. Vyasji says, Kamdev assured Indra, O Vasav, I will certainly help you. No matter which god they are meditating upon, I will be able to pierce their attention and break their meditation. But if they are meditating on the Devi, then there is no way that I can disturb them. Kleem is the most powerful Kama Bij mantra of the Devi. Anyone who meditates on this with full attention goes beyond my power. Therefore, if these two rishis are true devotees of that Mahashakti, then my arrows will be ineffective against them. Indra said, You are my well wisher, and it is imperative that you should use all the means at your disposal and succeed in this job. Vyasji says, The first to arrive on the Gandhamadan mountains was spring, unusual and untimely. It was as if the lion of spring had pierced the fierce elephant of winter with his claws, as testified by the budding of the palasa flowers. Cuckoos were warbling, bees were flying about lazily, and the air was heavy with the fragrance of flowers. All the trees, mango, bakul, tilak, palash, sakhu, palmyra, tamal, and mahua, were heavily laden with flowers and fruits. The goddess of spring has the Raktasoka flower as the palm of her hand, the Kimsukha flower as her excellent feet, Neelasukha flowers as her black hair, the full blown lotus as her eyes, the bale fruit her breasts, the jolly kunda her teeth, Manjari her beautiful ears, red bandhu flowers her lips, Sindhubara her wonderful nails, peacocks her ornaments, sounds made by the saras birds, the jingling of her piles, wreaths of creeper flowers her waist ornaments, the goose her gait, and the filaments of kadamba flowers the fine hairs on her body. The birds, bees, and other creatures were overcome with desire and passion and were indulging in the play of love. Even the two sages found their senses becoming overwhelmed and slowly getting out of their control. Judging the time to be right, Kamadev with Rati surrounded Badarikashram with his arrows. The 8,500 damsels sent by Indra were also present, led by Rambha and Tilottama. They were very accomplished and began to sing and dance. Their music, combined with the songs of the birds and the buzzing of the bumblebees, succeeded in breaking the samadhi of Nar and Narayan. They began to wonder what had interfered with the cycle of nature and brought winter to an abrupt end and ushered in a premature spring season. Narayan began to suspect that someone was trying to destroy their tapasya. Since Apsaras was singing, it was evident that Indra had a hand in this. Just then, the group from heaven became visible. Kamdev was leading. Nar and Narayan watched in amazement. They were the Apsaras, Menaka, Rambha, Tilottama, Pushpagandha, Sukeshi, Mahashweta, Manorama, Pramadwara, Gritachi, Geetagya, Charuhasini, Chandraprabha, Shobha, Vidyunmala, Ambujakshi, and Kanchan Malini. There were so many more, altogether 16,050. They bowed to the Munis and began to sing music so beautiful and appealing that no parallel could be found on earth. Muni Narayan was pleased and said, O intermediaries, be pleased to stay here. You are our honored guests and we extend our hospitality and welcome. Vyasji says, the Muni Narayan succumbed to his ego and decided that he would amaze them all by creating an Apsara whose beauty would surpass that of the Apsaras sent by Indra. He slapped his thigh, and from there appeared a woman of great beauty and form. All the Apsaras who were present were stunned with amazement. Then Muni Narayan created the same number of Apsaras as those sent by Indra. Then the Apsaras from heaven apologized to the two Munis. We were so foolish to even try to disturb your meditation. We now know that you are the Ansh, that is partial, avatars of Bhagwan Sri Hari. You are complete tranquility and bliss. We did not come for any purpose of our own, but were sent to accomplish a task by Indra. At least we had the good fortune to have your darshan. We must have done some punyas in our past lives. We have committed a serious offense and deserve to be punished. But wise saints do not squander away the powers derived from austerities on trivial things like cursing others. Vyasji says, in this way, the Apsaras begged forgiveness. The Munis heard them without reacting. They have become self controlled and desireless. Blazing with the cool fire of their tapas, they asked the Apsaras to request for a boon, which they would immediately grant. They also said, take the beautiful Apsara Urvashi as our gift to Indra and also the new Apsaras who have just been created. Now all of you, please leave us and go to heaven. But the Apsaras pleaded, you are Devadidev Bhagwan Narayan. We have surrendered to your lotus feet. Where can we go? O Madhusudan, your eyes are like lotus petals. If you will give us a boon, grant this. You please marry us so that we can spend the rest of our days here. Let Urvashi and the 16,050 Apsaras that you have created go to heaven and stay in the service of Indra. Please honor your promise of a boon to us. Bhagwan Narayan said, we have been meditating here for 1,000 years. Our senses are under control. How can we destroy this tapasya? We have no desires or lust, as these completely destroy sattvic joy. The Apsara said, of all the senses, touch gives the most pleasure and we are well versed in the art of giving pleasure. You can live permanently on these Gandhamadan mountains with us. Chapter 4, Episode 789. Narayan realizes the dangers of Ahankara. Vyasji says, hearing this, Narayan, the son of Dharma, realized, the present trouble has arisen entirely due to my Ahankara. This Ahankara can tear Dharma to pieces. Wise men have said that Ahankara is the root of the trees of the world. When the damsels from heaven came to tempt me, I should have maintained the vow of silence. But I communicated with them and fell into the trap of ego and created all those apsaras. I am now caught in the web of my own creation like a spider. Now I must think carefully what I should do. If I ignore their request, they will certainly curse me and leave. Then I can settle down to severe austerities and penance in this forest. Therefore, this seems to be a correct decision. The second great enemy is anger. It causes untold hardships to those who come under its influence. People have declared anger to be more dangerous than lust and greed. In anger, people also commit murder, which is the source of hell. Just as trees, rubbing together, cause a fire in which they themselves get burnt, so also the heat generated by anger ultimately burns the body. All these fears hovered over his head like black clouds, and he was greatly distressed. Then his younger brother Nar began to advise him. Nar said, Narayan, you are most fortunate and auspicious. Stay away from anger. Become peaceful in your mind and remove this ego. You might recall that once before, we came under the powerful influence of ego and broke our tapasya. We had also fallen into the trap of anger and had fought with Daityaraj, king of demons, that is Prahlad, for a full 1000 divine years. We suffered extreme hardships then. So please renounce your anger and become peaceful. The sages have declared peace to be the root cause and the only object of tapasya. Hearing his brother's advice, Dharmanandan Narayan became peaceful. Janmejay asked, O great Muni, a doubt has arisen in my mind. Prahlad was a great soul and a devotee of Bhagwan Vishnu. His mind was always at peace. Then why was there a war between him and Narnarayan in ancient times? The two sons of Dharma were tapasvis whose minds never got disturbed or agitated. Then what caused the war between them? Prahlad was a Dharmatma of the highest order, full of wisdom and divine knowledge, and a foremost devotee of Sri Vishnu. Nar and Narayan were also endowed with these qualities. Also, they never spoke an untruth, and yet there was a conflict between them. It appears that religion and asceticism, tapasya and dharma, were just actions performed superficially. 1 lakh years of severe asceticism were rendered useless by just one act of ahankara. If these two rishis could not conquer their ahankaras, then how can we, mere mortals, subjugate our ahankara? I am now quite convinced that in this universe, no one has ever been free from ahankara, nor will anyone be free of it in the future. It is easier to free oneself from the bondage of iron or wooden chains than to escape the clutches of ahankara. Just as the rising sun dispels darkness, so also the seed of ahankara germinates and devours all the punyas. If such spiritually evolved beings could not gain victory over their ahankaras, what will happen to ordinary beings like me? Vyasji says, Bharat, it is certain that the effect cannot be different from the cause. For example, gold and golden earrings, though different in form, have the same causal, that is, gold. Thread is the cause of cloth. So also, this universe has sprung from Ahankara. Therefore, it cannot be free from Ahankara. All this moving and unmoving universe, including a blade of grass, is fashioned out of Trigunatmak Maya. So the wise recognize every phenomena as unreal. Ahankara gives birth to lust, anger, greed, and attachment. Under their influence, man has no control over his actions. Janmejay said, they are really great souls who have been able to free themselves of these powerful influences. Those who have renounced desires and attachments and who have conquered their senses have won a victory over all the three lokas. The foolish man always has his eyes on the honey, but does not see the dangerous place from which it comes. He loses all fear of hell. Please tell me the ancient story of the war. It is common for wars to be fought over wealth or women, but Nar and Narayan were beyond these vices, and so was Prahlad. So, what was the cause? Please tell me in detail. Sudji says, Vyasji began his narration to satisfy the curiosity of Janmejay. Vyasji said, O king, when the fearful Hiranyakashipu died, his son Prahlad was crowned king. He was a devotee of the Devas and a protector of Brahmins. During his reign, yagyas were performed with all the procedures and protocols. The Brahmins were supported in their performance of tapasya, spreading of dharma, and visiting places of pilgrimage. The traders did their business of buying and selling, and the Shudras served everyone. The Lord Narasimha had ordered Prahlad to settle in Patal, so he ruled his kingdom there and cared for his subjects. It happened a long time ago. The great tapasvi Chyavanji, son of Bhrigu, went to the holy river Narmada to have a bath. This holy place is also known as Vyahritishwar Tirth. As he was going down the steps to the river Reva, a venomous snake caught hold of him and dragged him down to Patal. Muni Chyavan was filled with terror and he began to remember Devadidev Bhagwan Vishnu. In his mind, he began to recite the holy names of the Lord. No sooner had he started than all the poison from the serpent's body vanished. This filled the snake with fear and apprehension that this great ascetic would put a curse on him. He sent all the beautiful Nagakanyas, that is, serpent maidens, to perform puja to the Muni. Then Chyavanji entered the abode of the demons and Nagas. One day, Muni Chyavan was out walking in that country when Prahlad, king of the Daityas, spotted him. Prahlad offered him obeisance and inquired, Bhagwan, how is it you have come here? Please do tell me. Indra bears enmity towards us. Can it be that he has sent you here to spy on our kingdom? O twice born, please tell me the truth. Chyavan Muni said, I have nothing to gain from Indra that would make me come as his spy. Please know that I am the son of Bhrigu and my name is Chyavan. I am blessed with eyes that have divine perception. Do not for a moment think that I have been sent by Indra. I had gone to bathe in the holy river Narmada when a great snake caught hold of me. I immediately called to mind Bhagwan Sri Vishnu, who caused the snake to lose all its venom. Then it released me. O king, after that I came into your kingdom and have had the good fortune of your darshan. O king of the Daityas, you are a devotee of Sri Vishnu and you must recognize me also as a devotee. Vyasji says, Chyavan Muni spoke in a very sweet and pleasing manner. Prahlad began to ask him about all the holy places that he had visited. Prahlad asked, O Munivar, How many holy places are there on earth? Also tell me about the holy places that exist in heaven and in Patal, nether regions. Chyavan Muni said, O king, the person who has a pure mind, word, and body, for him every step is a tirth. For the corrupted and defiled man, the Ganga even seems more unholy than Magad. If the mind and attention is purified, then all his filth and impurities leave him, and all places become auspicious and holy by his presence. Otherwise, there are many holy spots along the banks of the river Ganga. Besides this, there are also a lot of little villages and hamlets which have sprung up. O king, these places are also inhabited by primitive tribes, fishermen, Huns, a tribe of Mongols, some tribes of Bengal, Khas, ancient tribes of Garhwal, and others who are all low born persons who indulge in sinful lifestyles. But, O sinless king, not a single person there dies in a state of purity and grace. A man whose body and mind are filthy, what can he benefit from a Tirthasthan, that is, holy place? In such a situation, the mind should be considered the main cause, nothing else. Those who are desirous of getting cleansed should first of all purify their attention and their mind even before setting out for the holy place. If his mind is full of deceit, then even in a holy place he is considered a sinner. Sins committed in a holy place bear extremely harmful fruit. Therefore, a man who visits a holy place should first cleanse his mind and attention. The material body automatically gets cleansed. There is no doubt in this. Similarly, the conduct should also be clean and dharmic. Then one becomes completely holy. One must not commit despicable acts in a holy place, nor should they keep company with immoral people. One should be compassionate to all. O king, if you still want to know, I can tell you of holier places. The foremost is an ancient forest called Naimisharanya. Then there is Chakra Tirth and Pushkar Tirth and many more on the earth. It is not possible to name all. Vyasji says, hearing this, Prahlad decided to go to Naimisharanya. Filled with joy, he gave orders to his demon subjects. Prahlad said, Most fortunate Daityas, arise. Today we will proceed to Naimisharanya. There we will have a darshan of Bhagwan Sri Hari, dressed in pitambar, that is yellow silk. He will be seated on his throne. Vyasji says, all the Daityas rejoiced and a big horde of Daityas and Danavas left Patal. On reaching Naimisharanya, they all took a customary bath. Then they visited all the holy places there. They beheld the most sacred Saraswati river. The water was clean and pure. Prahlad's heart began to swell with great joy. He bathed in its pure waters and completed the rituals and the giving of alms. That most holy place became the cause of great happiness and joy to Prahlad. Vyasji says, after completing all the rituals, Prahlad saw before him a huge banyan tree giving extensive shade. He noticed a lot of arrows lying there. They were of different designs and all had the feathers of vultures at the end. They had been sharpened so much they were shining. Seeing this, Prahlad began to wonder, whoever these arrows belong to, what can cause him to stay in the vicinity of rishis, ashrams, and holy places? He had hardly thought this when there came into sight the sons of Dharma, Nar and Narayan. They were dressed in the skin of black antelope. Their matted hair was wound on top of their heads. Lying in front of them were two shining bows. Bearing powerful emblems, these bows were known as Sharang and Ajgav, bows of Lord Vishnu. There were also two quivers filled with many arrows. The two rishis were in deep meditation. Seeing this, Prahlad's eyes became red with anger. He addressed them, "What is this hypocrisy? This is what is destroying Dharma and turning it into dust. This kind of a situation has neither been seen nor heard in the whole world. On the one side there is intense tapasya, and on the other the hands are lifting bows and arrows. This was never considered fit even in the past ages. When Brahmins are engaged in doing tapasya, where is the need for them to possess weapons? When a person wears a jata on the head and then carries weapons also, it is only a display of arrogance. You are both divine personalities. It is fitting for you to observe dharmic conduct." Vyasji says, "O king, hearing Prahlad's words, Narayan replied, 'King of Daityas, why are you showing unnecessary interest in us and our tapasya? We are samarth. Give complete meaning to ourselves. The whole world knows this. War and tapasya, we have an involvement in both. There is nothing you can do about it. It is better for you to leave. Do not indulge into idle chatter. One gets divine effulgence, that is Brahma Tej, after very severe penance and tapasya. Those who desire happiness should not cast aspersions on a Brahmin." Prahlad said, "O Tapasvis, you are being conceited and arrogant for no reason. I am the king of the Daityas and the support of Dharma. It is improper for you to insult me in such a holy place. O great ascetic, what powers do you have? Come and show it on the field of battle." Vyasji says, Prahlad was a matchless warrior. He took a vow that no matter how many boons these tapasvis had received, and no matter how much they had conquered their senses, he would somehow defeat them. Vyasji says, Prahlad picked up his bow and strung it. Then he pulled it, and it made a great resounding noise. Nar also picked up his bow and fixed one of the sharp arrows. Filled with anger, he shot all the arrows at Prahlad, who in turn used his brilliantly colored arrows to slice through the arrows sent by Nar. Seeing this, Nar shot 5 quick arrows and wounded Prahlad in the arm. Indra and the other gods came on their vahanas to watch the fight from the skies. By turns, they applauded the two warriors. Prahlad's arrows came quick and fast like rain from a cloud. Then Narayan picked up his huge bow, Sharang, and fixed a golden feathered arrow on it. This time, all Prahlad's arrows were shot into pieces by Narayan. At that time, the eternal Lord Sri Hari had incarnated in the house of Dharma as his sons Nar and Narayan. He it was who stood in front of Prahlad, who was raining arrows on him. Narayan let loose a shower of razor sharp arrows which caused deep injuries to Prahlad. Vyasji says, the fierce fighting continued. Narayan broke Prahlad's bow and he quickly picked up a new one. That too was broken by Narayan. In this way, he broke many bows. Then Prahlad picked up a spear and threw it at Narayan's arm. But before it could reach him, Narayan cut it with his 9 arrows, and with the 10th arrow he injured Prahlad. Then Prahlad picked up an iron mace and hit it on the thigh of Narayan. But Narayan stood steady as a rock. The mace was also broken to pieces by Narayan. Prahlad threw a sword at Narayan, which he cut into 7 pieces with an arrow. Then he aimed 7 arrows at Prahlad. The fierce fighting continued for 1000 years and would not end. Then Bhagwan Vishnu appeared in that ashram. He was in his divine form with 4 arms. He wore yellow silk cloth. In his 4 arms He bore the Shankh, Chakra, Gadha, and Padma. He set his holy feet in the ashram of Prahlad. Prahlad was overcome with joy. He folded his hands and bowed his head in worship. Prahlad said, Madhav, you are worshipped even by the gods. You govern the entire creation. It is your nature to be compassionate to your devotees. Lord, please tell me why I have not been able to defeat these two tapasvis. I have been fighting with them for 1,000 years and have not been able to defeat them. Bhagwan Vishnu said, O noble soul, these are divine personalities. They are partial incarnations of myself. So you should not wonder. They are completely self controlled and they are known as Nar and Narayan. You cannot be victorious over them. Therefore, O king, return to Patal, install me in your heart, and always meditate upon me. It is undesirable to get into conflict with these tapasvis. Vyasji says, Prahlad immediately obeyed Sri Vishnu. He took all his daityas and demons and returned to Patal. Nar and Narayan resumed their tapasya. Chapter 4, Episode 10-11. Victory of the Devas over the Daityas. Daityas get protection from Shukracharya. Shiv Tapasya. Janmejay said, Vyasji, I do not understand one thing. Nar and Narayan were partial incarnations of Sri Vishnu. They were always in tapasya. They lived in the forest and ate only roots and berries. They never spoke an untruth. They were sattva-gunis, and yet they entered a battlefield and fought for 1,000 years. Why did they break their tapasya? Why did they renounce the joy of peace and pick up arms against Prahlad? O most auspicious one, please tell me what caused Nar and Narayan to fight with Prahlad. Vyasji said, the all-knowing sages who have got their realization have declared that the threefold Ahankara is the cause of this creation. Therefore, these two Munis, Nar and Narayan, being creatures of this world, cannot forego their Ahankaras. Without any cause, there is no action. When Sattvic Guna predominates, it becomes the cause of Yagyas, Tapasya, sacrifice and charity. Quarrels arise from Rajo or Tamo. Everything arises from Ahankar, whether good or bad. This is the absolute truth. There is nothing that binds a soul like Ahankara. It is out of Ahankara that the universe is created. So how can anything or anyone in it be free from Ahankara? Rajan, all living things take birth again and again according to the law of karmas. The gods, mortals, and animals have to hang about in various yonis, that is, strata of animate beings, 84 lakh in number. Like the wheels of a chariot, this creation revolves in a series of changes. The Lord of the universe incarnates in various forms according to the situation for the preservation of Dharma. In the 7th Vaivasvat Manvantar, the 14 sons of Brahma, who were the progenitors of the human race, were called Manus, and the era of each was a Manvantar. Sri Hari took many avatars. Listen carefully, I will tell you about them. Once, Bhrigu Muni wished to curse the Lord, and to fulfill this curse, Lord Vishnu gave him a boon to cause the Lord to incarnate on the earth. From then on, Sri Vishnu took many forms and came on earth. Janmejay said, why did Bhrigu curse Sri Vishnu? He is the supreme lord of the entire universe. What action of his could have upset Bhrigu Muni so such that he had the audacity to curse the Lord? Vyasji said, Rajan, I will tell you the reason why Bhrigu cursed the Lord. Listen carefully. This is an ancient story. There was a king called Hiranyakashipu. Kashyap ji was his father. In those days, whenever there was a fighting between Daityas and Devas, the whole world would be shaken. When Hiranyakashipu died, his son Prahlad became king. He also engaged in war with Indra. The battle lasted for 100 years. The Devas fought so valiantly that Prahlad had to concede defeat. But this had a wonderful effect on him. He realized the eternal religion and understood its importance. He handed the kingdom over to his son Bali and left for the Gandhamadan mountains to meditate and undertake tapasya. King Bali also fell into conflict with the Devas, and again war started between Devas and Daityas. With the support of Indra, the Devas were again victorious. Bhagwan Vishnu had also helped Indra by depriving the Daityas of their kingdom. After losing the battle, all the Daityas retreated to the ashram of their Guru Shukracharya to seek his protection. They said, O Brahmin, you are so powerful and yet you did not help us. You have the knowledge of all the mantras. If you do not help us, we cannot stay on the earth. We will be forced to go to Patal. Vyasji says, Shukracharya Muni was very compassionate. He said, Do not be afraid. With my powers, I will make arrangements for you to stay here. I will use mantras and medicines to look after you. Be confident and don't worry. Vyasji says, After this assurance, the Daityas were no longer afraid. Spies conveyed this information to the Devas. They went into consultation with Indra. They were aware of the power of Shukracharya's mantras and they became afraid. They all decided to act fast so as to prevent Shukracharya from using effective mantras. They would start a war and kill as many Daityas as possible and chase the rest into Patal. With Indra's permission, the Devas led a surprise attack on the Daityas. The Daityas ran to Shukracharya crying, Help us! Save us! Shukracharya stood up and said loudly, Do not fear. Hearing this and fearing that he would use his mantra, the Devas fled. Then Shukracharya spoke to the Daityas. O fortunate Danavas, a long time ago, Brahmaji told me something. Listen and I will tell you. Bhagwan Vishnu is always alert to destroy the Daityas. A great destruction of Daityas is about to take place at his hands. When he incarnated in the form of a boar, Varaha, he killed Hiranyaksh. His incarnation as half man, half lion, that is Narasimha, destroyed Hiranyakashipu. In the same way, he is going to destroy all the Daityas shortly. He is full of zeal and valor, and no one should underestimate him. So I advise all of you Daityas to wait here. I will go to Bhagwan Shankar and get from him the knowledge for making my mantra effective. After receiving all this knowledge, I will come back and teach it to you. The Daityas said, O Muni, we have been defeated and we have become weak. We will not be able to wait on the earth for very long. All the brave and strong Daityas have been killed. Those who are remaining are unfit for anything. Shukracharya said, It is absolutely necessary for you to wait here till I bring back the mantra from Bhagwan Shankar. Even if you have to become tapasvis, you must do it. Intelligent and brave men use any measures like conciliation, alliance, gifts, bribes, and even serve their enemies and lull them into complacency. Once their own strength improves and their army increases, they fight. So, pretend your meekness and keep the peace till I return. Through the grace of Bhagwan Shankar, as soon as I receive the mantra, I will come back and with his protection we can start a war. Shukracharya left and the Daityas took his advice and started peace talks with the Devas. They said, O Devas, we are tired of fighting. We are laying aside our weapons. We will wear the bark of trees and lead a life of asceticism. The Devas believed them and went away very relieved. Now that the Daityas had renounced their weapons, there was nothing to fear. The Daityas settled down in sage Kashyap's ashram to await the return of their guru. Shukracharya reached Kailash. He offered obeisance to Bhagavan Shankar. The Lord asked him why he had come. Shukracharya said, Bhagavan, I desire to receive that mantra which even Brihaspati does not possess. I wish to use it for the defeat of the Devas and the victory of the Daityas. Vyasji says, Sri Shankar went into meditation. He thought, what must I do in this situation? This Shukracharya is the guru of the Daityas. He has come with the intention of getting a mantra and using it to defeat the Devas. Then he opened his eyes and gave the Muni a difficult austerity to perform. He said, for a full 1,000 years you must stand with your head downwards and your feet upwards and only inhale the smoke from burning husk. If you complete this austerity, you will receive the mantra. Shukracharya bowed his head and said, O Venerable One, I will go immediately and start the austerity as per your command. Vyasji says, Shukracharya started the severe austerity and sustained himself only on the smoke from burning husk. The Devas realized that the Daityas were only in the garb of ascetics waiting for their Guru Shukracharya to return with the mantra. They also began various rituals and fasts to obtain mantras for themselves. Then they picked up their weapons and went to the place where the leaders of the Daityas were staying. Seeing the Devas approach with arms, the Daityas were filled with fear. They immediately stood up and faced the proud and confident Devas and began to confess, We have kept away our weapons. At this moment, our Guru is in the midst of severe penance. O Devas, it is not fitting for you to try and kill us in these circumstances. Also, you promised us safe harbor. It is revealed in the Holy Scriptures that it is wrong to attack unarmed, fearful, or persons under your protection. The Deva said, You have sent Shukracharya to obtain a mantra to be used against us, and with this deceit in your hearts, you are sitting in meditation. We have become aware of your falsehood. That is why we are here to fight. Take up your arms. It is a general practice to defeat the enemy whenever an opportunity presents itself. Vyasji says, the Daityas consulted each other and then left the place in great fear. They ran for protection to the mother of their Guru. She immediately took them into her house. The mother of Shukracharya said, Do not be afraid. As long as you are under my protection, no harm can come to you. So they settled down in her ashram to wait for their Guru. The Devas followed their footprints and arrived at the ashram and began to beat the Daityas who had none of their weapons with them. Kavya Mata, mother of Shukracharya, pleaded with the Devas to stop, but they continued killing the Daityas. Kavya Mata flew into a rage and invoked Nidra to overwhelm all the Devas, including Indra, with deep sleep. All the Devas lay mute and helpless, and Indra became weak and drowsy. Seeing this, Lord Vishnu said, O King of Devas, come to me. I will transport you. Indra found himself in the presence of Sri Hari. He got back his energy and Nidra could not overwhelm him. When Kavyamata saw that Indra had revived and was filled with his former energy, she became very angry. She cried out, Indra, by my powers, I will swallow you and Vishnu. All the Devas will watch helplessly. Vyasji says, Shukracharya's mother was well versed in yogic practices. She caused all the energy to drain out of Sri Vishnu and Indra. Both became weak and pale. The Devas watched in helpless amazement. Then Indra addressed Sri Vishnu. He said, Madhusudan, I am extremely sad to see you like this. Prabhu, please strike these demoness immediately. She has become arrogant because of her powers obtained by tapasya. Before she attacks us, please destroy her, do not delay. The pure desire of Indra was heard by Sri Hari. He immediately put his attention on Sudarshan Chakra, which is always in readiness awaiting the Lord's command. It arrived instantly. In response to Indra's prayer, Sri Vishnu used the Sudarshan Chakra and separated the head of Shukracharya's mother from her body. Indra and the Devas began to praise the Lord with Jai Jaikars. Since then, the dreadful act of killing a woman filled the hearts of Sri Vishnu and Indra with fear that Shukracharya's father, Bhrigu Muni, would put a curse on them.
The Holy Recital of Srimad Devi Bhagavat.
Jai Shri Mataji.